Having spoken at some length on the subject, I feel I need to recapitulate what I've just stated. And all I'm saying is that we human beings have this tremendous ability to speak that other animals don't have. And this is why we are able to make such tremendous progress in terms of technology and philosophically, and we try to understand things. We have laboratories, we have libraries, and when one generation leaves off, or one individual does some work on something, the next individual can take it from there. But the animals are just as dumb or just as smart as for thousands of years they have been. Today's dog is not any smarter than the dog that lived 10,000 years ago. He is not benefiting from the knowledge gained by the previous generations, but we humans do. And the ability is because of the ability to verbalize. So we verbalize and we write it down, or through spoken word, or through things that we make. So I make a rough invention, then somebody refines it, and the next individual refines it. Or I create one theory of scientific knowledge, and the next individual takes it from there, and he finds some defects or he revises my theories. And this is how humans progress from generation to generation. So that is the very, very wonderful aspect of being able to speak is. But then there is the dark side of it. And the dark side is that we use this language, this ability to speak. We have created a language which is not of a very good structure, subject and predicate, which is very simple. Things, and then their names, and then their qualities. And that structure is inadequate to express rather complex and elaborate affairs of daily life. And it's very primitive made. This is how the caveman made the structure, and we have inherited it. And we just keep refining it in terms of improved vocabulary. Whenever we go into a new scientific field, it has its own language. Biology has its own language. Psychology has its own language. Physics has its own language. Chemistry has its own language. Somebody who's repairing cars, he has his own language. So you go have your car repaired. To you, it only means the car is broken down and it will cost so much money to fix it. But to the mechanic, it means all the parts that have to be replaced and all the parts that have to be disengaged from the vehicle, and how much labor it will take to do that. It may be a simple defect. It's a little gasket, which may cost only 50 cents, but putting it in there may cost hundreds of dollars, the labor. So his language and his ability, so he speaks to his own people or within himself in the way of that is appropriate to the repairing of cars. A doctor would speak his own language, and doctors, when they speak to each other about the patient doesn't get any idea what the hell they're talking about. But when the doctor talks to the patient, he says, "Oh, you'll be okay, you're doing not so badly," and he tells a different language, different story to his relatives. And so it is all a matter of language, a proper use of language. Now we have chosen that when we are in our daily lives, we tend to use language in a very loose and fuzzy fashion, and we are able to inflict upon ourselves emotions and states of minds and even entire reality, which is not warranted at all. When you look at it, there are people who are extremely rich and they are depressed, and there are people who are poor and extremely happy. And yet we have created this in our minds that acquisition of material goods is the end all, unless you have 10 pairs of shoes or so many pairs of something else, or you have one of everything that you need. You don't feel you are having a good time or a good life. Whereas there are a lot of people who talk of simplicity, and they say enjoy yourself, enjoy your good health, enjoy physical activity, and not. For instance, for me, it's very difficult to sit and watch a football game for 2 or 3 hours when they're getting all the exercise and I'm sitting in my couch drinking beer, which is quite the opposite of what they're doing. And so my enjoyment would be that I would be the one who should be running around chasing the ball and get some benefit of it. But at verbal level, we have decided that watching spectator sport, which we spend millions and billions of dollars, is a very worthwhile activity. but not to me, because at silent level I see it is totally counterproductive to my health, and it's making me inactive. And watching somebody else play a good game doesn't give me any joy. I would rather play a lousy game myself and get more enjoyment out of that. So that's the silent level reaction versus the verbal reaction. Or I could put myself into hock by buying an extremely expensive car, and I'm making $300 to $400 payments every month, and it's making me suffer in other areas of my life financially. I'm not eating so well, maybe. I'm reminded of the story when the driver of Princess Diana, who crashed his car and had her all killed. There was a Newsweek correspondent who went and found that this man was living in a very dingy small apartment in some nice area of Paris, and he said, how could he live? He must be a very unhappy man. But the fact is that this man carried a lot of cash in his pocket all the time, and he was doing a lot of bar hopping, and he was always found in good surroundings, and he was having a good time. But to the Newsweek correspondent, who was evaluating him based on his little apartment, which was not very well furnished and wasn't so large, which to Americans, having a large apartment, the bathroom is larger here than some people's homes in Europe. And so to him, it seemed like this Frenchman was having a rather uninteresting life. But to me, I thought I would rather trade my life with that guy who was carrying hundreds of francs all the time in his pocket. That means he was having a whale of a time. The only bad thing was that he was probably too much of an alcoholic. And that was the bad part. Or he was on drugs that were, he was a depressed individual. But the way he was living his life was nothing wrong with that. So to make that statement was wrong. And this is how we tend to make ourselves happy, by wearing a good dress, or driving a beautiful car, or living in a big house, or living in some idyllic surroundings. But we have nothing in our lives other than watching spectator sports, or doing crossword puzzles, or reading newspapers, or watching sitcoms at night on television, wolfing down pizza and beers. So this is all verbal level. So everybody creates his own lifestyle according to his words, and he or she spend their energies in accordance with that verbalism that they have created. And no wonder that it is not very satisfying to live, because you are leading a lifestyle based on some verbally approved lifestyles versus the lifestyle that is actually brings you enjoyment. If you're going to drive for skiing, for instance, having worked 5 days in an office, and you have 2 days a weekend, which you're going to leave home at the early Friday, earlier than normal quitting time, say 4 o'clock, and you're going to drive 5 hours to Lake Tahoe, and then arrive there at dead of night and get into a chalet or an apartment, and in the morning you are standing in line to get to the skiing lift and so on, and then you work and ski like expending a lot of energy during the day, and then you, at the end of this week-long trip, you come back home all tired Monday. There's not much enjoyment, but yet we think that living a life like that is really living the life. It's a great life. Whereas when you check your body and the amount of energy you have spent and the amount of money you have spent, probably it's not worth engaging in that kind of activity. And then, but verbally, it sounds very nice that I had a skiing weekend, and that is summarized in those words. And of course, there's the drinking that goes on at night, which further weakens your body, and then. And we hear all kinds of accidents that also occur from this. So it's a very expensive hobby. Then on top of it, suppose you own a sailboat. Now that really makes your life very, very enjoyable. But look what you have to do now. Now you have to take your sailboat also to the ocean or to the river from time to time. And you don't have enough time and energy in you because you still have 40-hour work week. And so you're spreading yourself too thinly in your physical activities. But at verbal level, you are having the life of a playboy or a great sportsman. But when you look at it silent level without words, you find that you are a nervous wreck and a physical wreck. For instance, personally, I would never run a marathon. I would just rather run 2 miles a day 13 days and make it